We're delighted to be launching B4 in Cambridge and already have connections with businesses based in Cambridge who have branched into Oxford or who have established offices in Oxford. We've been warmly welcomed by our new connections, many of whom will be joining us on today's show. But first, let's take a look at some interesting facts about Cambridge. Cambridge is famous for its university, currently one of the best in the world, and its scientists. It is the town where the atom was first split, where the structure of DNA was discovered, where Charles Darwin developed the theory of evolution, where Isaac Newton developed his theory of gravity, and where Stephen Hawking used to live and work. It has been home to some of the greatest thinkers of the last 500 years. But Cambridge isn't all academia. Pink Floyd, one of the world's most famous rock bands of the 60s and 70s, was formed in Cambridge. The band's founder, Syd Barrett, was born in Cambridge in 1946 and died in Cambridge in 2006. Many other members of the band were also educated in the city too. Cambridge University has produced 89 Nobel Prize winners over the years in no less than 6 different disciplines. These disciplines being physics, peace, chemistry, medicine, literature and physiology. Today's rules for football were first established in Cambridge in 1848. Parker's Piece in the city centre was where the first official game of football was played. It was these rules that formed the basis for the FA's official rules in 1863. Cambridge is also a thriving place for business. In recent years, Cambridge has become a tech hub, dubbed the Silicon Fen for its plethora of startups. It's estimated that 18% of the UK's gaming industry is based here, alongside a host of science and technology companies, including AstraZeneca and Arm, with some of them valued in the billions. Now let's meet some of our new Cambridge members.
Gareth, welcome to B4. How are you?
I am extremely well. Thank you very much for having me. It's a delight to be chatting to you.
And it's an absolute delight to see you in another flamboyant shirt. So they're obviously your signature piece.
Well, actually, this is one of my more sensible ones, to be honest.
So Gareth, good to have you on board with B4. So Gareth John, you're from First Intuition. Perhaps you'd like to give a bit of background about yourself and the business. I mean, we first came into contact, we were introduced via COEL, I think, and the fantastic event that you had. We had sort of 300 plus attendees. So maybe give us a bit of background about that and a little bit of a plug for your next talk, which I think is in May.
Yeah, so I'm Gareth John. I am a qualified accountant. I trained as an accountant 25 odd years ago, but actually very quickly decided that I didn't want to be an accountant myself or be an auditor myself. So I moved quickly into professional education, professional training. So for the last quarter of a century, I've been training other people to do their accountancy exams across the spectrum of qualifications. Some of our viewers may be aware of AAT or ICAEW or ACCA or CIMA, the major accounting qualifications. So my business, First Intuition, we're operating all around the country, but we've got bases in kind of Cambridge, Chelmsford, Norwich, Ipswich, different parts of East Anglia particularly. And we train accountants. We work with accountancy firms. We work with some of the big local firms like PEM, for instance. We work with finance functions of a lot of local businesses. We work with the NHS. I've got a conversation later with Adam Brooks, actually, sort of talking about their trainees. So yeah, actually I wear several hats, and actually you mentioned an event that I was involved in back in December. So I'm currently the president in East Anglia of the ICAEW, the Chartered Accountancy Institute. And we try and run various events for members and for the wider business community. I think the event you referred to, we had our economic summit in December, where I think we had 328 live attendees at one point, just talking about the impact the pandemic had on the economy in East Anglia, and particularly what professionals such as accountants perhaps could do to make sure that the coming recovery as we move towards it. There's something I'm quite passionate about, making sure that the recovery for business is rapid, obviously. And actually the evidence is looking good that we should be back to pre-COVID GDP levels by the middle of 2022, which I think is earlier than they were originally expecting. So I think we want a rapid recovery, we want a sustained recovery. And and we want an equitable recovery is really the key for me. I think it's clear that the last year has, highlighted and exacerbated some, disadvantages in certain sectors and certain geographies in the region. So I think, professionals widely actually need to do our bit to make sure that we are, making sure everyone is brought along in the recovery.
Yeah, no, I think it's a fair point you make about it being an equitable recovery. We've seen certain massive polarisation between the haves and the have-nots over the last year, haven't we? Depending on what sector your business happens to be in, and it would be great to see some of that equity sort of restored over the next sort of 12 to 18 months and beyond, obviously. So
I think so, and there's been so much progress in recent years. I mean, in my sector, which is training accountants, a lot of employers I work with have moved more towards school leaver programs, so you don't even need to go to university in order to get a good career in professional accountancy. The use of apprenticeships is really widespread. So actually over the last few years, access to a profession like accountancy has really broadened, which is great. But I do wonder to what extent, and fear really, how much the last year has perhaps turned the clock back a few years. I think digital exclusion is a major issue for some young adults. Obviously, my own daughters have been homeschooling, for most of the last 12 months. And, you can imagine that for young adults in a situation where they maybe don't have the hardware, don't have the software, don't have the connectivity, don't have a quiet space to work, that's going to have been so challenging. And even going forward, the move towards significant levels of hybrid working, which I think we're all going to probably see. I think the days of the 9 to 5, 5 days a week in the office, I think are probably over now. I think that genie's well and truly out of the bottle. But with hybrid working, I think comes similar potential, chasms between people who can cope and have the space and have the technology, have the connectivity, and those that don't. And I fear for, what all of this might do for, inclusion, for social mobility in various fronts, not just from, school level and young adults coming into the workplace, but right the way through careers. I mean, I think I'm sure you'll agree that, the changes that COVID and Brexit and the kind of sustainability agenda, they're going to be a real rebalancing of economies, I think. And, we've got to make sure again that is done in a very equitable way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't know how well you know Oxford. I'm sure you're aware of certain aspects of Oxford, obviously. But I mean, in talking about equality, there's huge areas of poverty here in Oxford and inequalities of wealth. Does the same exist in Cambridge as well?
Absolutely, in Cambridge itself, and more widely in Cambridgeshire, there can be huge disparities between, almost neighbouring, streets almost in certain parts of the city, but then also in neighbouring geographies. If you go out into the Fenlands, it's very different to if you're in kind of South Cambs. And I think the last 12 months has, I think, highlighted some of those disparities and the need. And I hope, if anything, as we come out of the pandemic, it's really highlighted to everyone how important, your local communities are, your local pubs and restaurants, your local shops. And, I do hope that we will see, I think some of the fragilities of international distribution chains have been exposed in the last year. And, I know a lot of local businesses, they'll be suffering from the impact of Brexit. And, I know there's been big increases in costs of containers, for instance, for international shipping. And I hope there'll be big opportunities for building more local supply chains within the region, actually. And whether, obviously we've got the arc from Oxford to Cambridge, including kind of Milton Keynes. And, given it's such a, central part of the UK in itself, I hope that's an area that can really see some economic, growth and act as hopefully an engine to the wider country.
Definitely. And in terms of your business, Gareth, over the last 12 months, you've referenced you've got a meeting this afternoon with NHS, and you've got a lot of interest in what you do, I'm sure. And have you been affected badly, or has it been a year in which you thrived?
I guess nobody wants to, be taking advantage of what has been a dreadful situation, for the the globe, and for the economy and for so many individuals. I've been very fortunate really with the way that I think my business has weathered it. I've never been as proud of the people I work with than I have in the last 12 months, to see the way that the teams I work with in different places have really stepped up. Literally overnight we deliver accountancy training, and we literally went 100% virtual overnight with the first lockdown. Actually, it went incredibly smoothly, more smoothly than I could really have hoped for. The progression of our learners has carried on the whole. Feedback from our clients has been very, very positive. In fact, we've been winning significant market share during the pandemic. I think we just tried to focus on supporting our clients as quickly and as effectively as we could. In fact, the last year I felt more like a press officer than anything, just constantly pushing out messages and communication and updates, just making sure that everyone knew what was happening with the awarding bodies we work with, or with apprenticeships, or with changes to delivery modes. So we were keeping our clients constantly informed, but also actually, and probably I would say maybe even more importantly, not just client support, but colleague support, looking after each other. Working at home has brought, hugely different challenges, I think, for all of us. I've seen big benefits of working at home. I do not miss the time I used to spend in my car or on trains. And I've realized actually how little work I used to do in a normal week when I was traveling all around the region, all around the country. And actually my productivity has exploded. And I think that's probably true for many. But, the lack of interaction with my colleagues, with my learners, with my clients has been really difficult to take, much as technologies, that we all have been using, Zoom, Teams, that we've been getting very used to over the last year, that does help an awful lot. It's not quite the same. But yeah, we've managed to keep our learners on track. We put a lot of effort into looking after our colleagues, and actually team spirit, bizarrely, given we've not been in the same place for so long, team spirit is, I think, higher than ever. We're certainly going to emerge from this terrible situation, I think, a stronger business and maybe a stronger brand than actually we even went into it.
It's funny, a couple of points you made there. I was reading a press release before you joined me, and talking about how a company, in particular, the subject of the press release, will be having more sort of team bonding sessions across the globe. They'll put the money that they used to invest in Christmas parties into other costs, savings that they've made on rent potentially, and leases, going into more team bonding, maybe monthly things where they fly people around the world, which would be great. And wouldn't that be fantastic for morale? And all that time that they're saving in investing in traveling as well. So a lot of cost savings being redirected into maybe more beneficial uses. I'm not sure whether that's necessarily environmentally friendly, flying everybody around the world, but it's certainly going to be good for team morale if that money sort of sunk into costs that will no longer be necessarily visible on the P&L, can be used for better things.
I certainly think it's going to be really interesting for all of us how different businesses bring forward the advantages of all of the virtual working. I did an employer forum actually last week, and I did some polling, and we had like 150 people there, so it was a big audience to get a good representative.
You don't do small numbers, do you, Gareth?
No, if you're going to do something, you want to do it properly. You don't do. But funnily enough, 80% roughly of the audience were working 5 days a week in the office pre-pandemic. Now, needless to say, at the moment, none of them are working in the office particularly. But what was interesting to me is that we asked them what their thoughts were after the pandemic, and nobody said they would be at home 5 days a week, and only 2% said they would be in the office 5 days a week. So actually, I don't think it'll be either extreme. I think we'll see a lot of people in the office 2-3 days a week, seems to be the norm I hear. And that's going to really change, I think, the layout of our offices. Maybe the days of ranks of desks in an office are kind of gone, because if I've got work to do, I'll probably stay at home to do it where I'm free of distractions. If I go into the office, it's going to be for the collaborative working. It's going to be for the team building, maybe for training, which obviously that doesn't require ranks of desks. And I think there's going to be a lot of interesting dynamics. I agree with your point around what will do to kind of property costs. But actually, we found so many great things. Me and my business, my business founder, sort of co-partner Stuart, we do a monthly town hall virtually for all of our colleagues across the country. And it's great. It gives us a chance to give very clear, consistent messages. They ask us questions. We do a bit of team building. At our recent session, we talked about our mission and core values. That would not be possible physically. It just wouldn't be possible to get everybody. There's 98 of us, I think, now. No way we could get everyone together every month to have a chat. So the balance will be, I think, retaining the power and the access that the technology offers, but equally allowing us to then get back into rooms with each other and have that physical face-to-face, because there are certain aspects of Zoom that I don't think quite mirror being in a room with people bouncing ideas and being genuinely kind of innovative.
No, but I think, when you're talking about a monthly meeting, for example, your town hall example, the people that couldn't have made that before, and obviously you're making the point that more people, the attendance is greater, but historically the people who would turn up to those meetings late, they'd have been hassled by traffic and all sorts of different mental states, but you come to those meetings on the whole fresh and ready to engage, which makes for a much more productive session. And I go back to your point about property costs. I wouldn't like to suggest for 1 minute that Carter Jonas and COEL are going to be struggling to service offices, because I think it's the point is it's going to be a change of use. And certainly our friends at COEL are talking about how be offices more used more for these sort of collaborative purposes and not the ranks of desks that you referenced. So,
absolutely. I don't know whether to kick myself, but just before the pandemic, just before the lockdown hit, we took on 50% more space in our office in Cambridge as an example, and a lot of our offices are growing, and obviously we've barely been in with that bigger building now. We've barely been in it since, but actually we're confident we will use that space. We do need, we've got 6,000 square foot now. We will use that. We just will use it quite differently. And actually COEL, we were talking to about our refit, and that got put on hold last March. And I think when we return to it, the refit will look quite different to what we would have ended up with. I think, you will end up with, whether it will be more collaborative. I don't know whether it will look more like a posh hotel, like some of these places that you go to now that don't really look like a working space because they're designed to be much more creative.
You think about examples like Google, maybe they knew something that the rest of us didn't. So, spaces. What comes to mind when you think of a different, wackier type of collaborative space? But maybe that's going to be the norm going forward. You talked about your business and how things have been for you over the last year, and I should imagine the picture going forward is similarly positive. In terms of Cambridge as a region and the wider area, how do you see the area faring going forward, and what are the key sort of strengths that are going to propel Cambridge and the wider East Anglia area forward?
I mean, I've always felt that Cambridge and more widely across the region, it's a bit of a bubble to some degree. I think we're protected sometimes from some of the fortunes of the wider economy, and I've always felt that my business, because we rely on recruitment, particularly into finance functions, obviously, but we rely on recruitment and training. And recruitment and training are often quite driven by the state of the economy. So I've always felt that we're quite a bellwether of the wider economy. Generally, in a boom, we do pretty well. In a recession, we don't. But actually, that's not really been the case in the last year. I think, organisations and business people, I think they can recognise that what's happened in the last year, it's not an economic crisis in the way that we had back in 2008-9. This is a health crisis with economic implications. And as that health crisis is eased through what has been a remarkable vaccine rollout, I had my jab actually on Friday, my first jab. I think the NHS have done an incredible job with that rollout, which is leading to so much more positivity now amongst organisations, amongst businesses, in the last 6 months, intakes into my programs have been as strong, if not stronger, than the same period a year ago, which, you know, back last summer in the height of the pandemic, I would not have expected that at all. So, and in fact, talking to employers, their plans for recruitment going forward to the, you know, tail end of 2021 and into 2022 are just as strong. You know, so, you know, if I can act as a bellwether for what's going on in the economy across all these sectors that I work with, I hear a lot more positive voices than I do negative. I'm not saying nobody's been, you know, affected. Obviously, sectors have been, but actually, I think there's as many businesses that have, and I know it's a word of the pandemic, but they've pivoted. You know, so many businesses have been agile and been flexible and, you know, made the best of an awful situation, but actually done it incredibly effectively, and have shown the adaptability that I think is going to be really critical to what we will now need to do in terms of embracing, you know, clean technologies and green technologies, embracing digital technologies over the coming years and coming decades. I think, you know, everything I've seen in the last year shows that we are really well placed now to actually grab what are some, you know, some huge opportunities, I think, for business and for industry over the coming years.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned earlier in the conversation about how quickly your team pivoted and adapted. And if this hadn't happened and you were planning to do that, how long it would have taken you to do that, to make those preparations? I mentioned it in a number of webinars with some of the larger businesses here, County Council, though in Mumford, and they said, you know, if we had to plan to do what we did in the space of 2 or 3 weeks, or even it would have taken 6 months to a year with, you know, procrastination and people saying, no, you can't do this, can't do that. It's amazing what you can do when you're put under pressure to change.
Absolutely, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And it makes me wonder whether even the concept, and I actually teach it as part of some of the stuff that we deliver, I teach corporate strategy. It makes you wonder, is the whole concept of corporate strategy increasingly redundant? Do we just need to be very flexible and adaptable to immediate pressures in our environments? I don't think it'll quite get that far, but, you know, can you realistically come up with a 5-year plan now when you sometimes don't even know what's going to be happening in 5 weeks, let alone 5 years' time? So I think it does bring, you know, new dynamics, but that's then bringing new skills. And, you know, if I hear anything from everyone I talk to, you know, about the recovery from all of this, it's going to be skills led. You know, it's going to be bringing in new skills, reskilling. It's going to be upskilling existing stuff. It's going to be particularly skills like leadership, like management, like new data driven skills. Which in that respect is you know, it's very good news for my organisation, because that's exactly our bread and butter.
I mean, you talk about skills, and I was going to ask you just finally, Gareth. Obviously, I would imagine the same is true in Cambridge. The cost of living is quite high, and it's a barrier to entry for many people coming to look to work in the area. And, you know, skills certainly is a key issue. It certainly was for businesses going into the pandemic. But now I'm hearing a lot more businesses talking about how the talent pool has now opened up because of the possibility of remote working. And talking to Will from Carter Jonas, that's not possible with every business. And a lot of businesses need, you know, feet on the ground actually in the place of work. But where possible, and I'm sure you're seeing it with a lot of the firms you work with, they are extending their reach into getting other areas.
Yeah, no, I definitely think so. And again, I think it's probably early days, but it's going to be really interesting to sort of see how. I mean, I was literally on a call before this, and I was talking to a lawyer who up until a year ago was based in Leeds and still is notionally based in the Leeds office of the law firm that he works for, but spent the last year on the south coast and is probably showing no signs of moving from there, but will still be based in Leeds. And, you know, I think, and it kind of brings to me some of the issues we will need to face. You know, I think, for instance, rural connectivity for broadband is going to become a far more pressing issue than the state of the A14, which up until a year ago was a massive concern. And obviously there's just been a huge project to, you know, extend the capacity of the A14. And I'm sure that will still be very valued. But actually, I think that, you know, infrastructure priorities may well be very different now as we see the impact of the pandemic on the changing nature of, you know, where people are located. And you know, that then itself brings new skills. And obviously there'll be technology skills that we'll all need to be used to. But you can imagine things like management, you know, managing a team of people if they are scattered in every corner of the country, you know, engaging them, motivating them, monitoring them. that's a really different kettle of fish to if they're sat in an office next to you 5 days a week. So yeah, I think there's going to be, you know, an awful lot of interesting skills issues arising. I mean, for me, one of the big challenges is that a lot of the skills we're going to see coming to the fore are far more kind of qualitative soft skills, interpersonal skills. They're the ones that tend to be harder to measure. So in terms of performing a skills audit within an organization, looking at where your current skills are, what you think the skills need to be, that's just going to become much harder when it's not tangible, you know, certificated, qualification driven skills like accountancy or engineering. So I think it's, you know, we're all going to have an awful lot to learn in coming years.
Excellent. Brilliant. Well, it's been a pleasure to have a chat with you, Gareth.
Yeah, you too.
Go and get some oil for that door now, and or have words with the guilty party. I'm not sure which. But
my daughter coming and going, do apologise.
Don't be silly. Brilliant. Well, lovely to see you, and we'll catch up soon. And we'll make sure we put a plug in for the event. Is it May the 25th? Is that right, from memory?
Yes, yeah. And so our round 2 of our economic summit, which will be really interesting to look at almost 6 months on from our December summit, in terms of where people have seen things get to.
Brilliant. Excellent. Look forward to it. Take care. Thanks, Gareth.
Fantastic. Good to speak to you.
Cheers. Ollie, how are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you, Richard. Yourself?
Good. Yeah, not too bad. Thanks, Ollie. Not too bad. Good to see you. And obviously, COEL have been members of B4 for the past couple of years. Very much in Cambridge. So maybe you'd like to give our viewers a little bit of background on COEL and what sort of size of business you are, because it's not an insignificant turnover you've got there.
No, so we're constantly growing. So our bread and butter is we're a commercial fit out business. So we've got internal teams that focus on interior design. We've got in-house mechanical team covering HVAC, plumbing works. We've got an internal furniture department as well. So we cover fit out and maintenance right the way through from small facilities maintenance up to sort of £6 million fit out projects. That covers, you know, your office, laboratory fit outs, education as well. So in terms of personnel, we're sit around a 60 person mark at the moment, but looking to grow, always looking to grow. But yeah, our main base is in Cambridge, but we do have Oxford office as well, and also a presence in Peterborough. But we cover pretty much anywhere along that Oxford to Cambridge corridor.
Excellent. And you're really at the cold face. You're digging out the sales. So you ever got in sale on the board before? Because if you have, it must have been a big day for you.
Not yet, no.
No.
So we're planning on that. One day, Richard, one day.
Excellent. Well, on the sales front, I mean, how has business been for the last 12 months? Obviously, it was, I should imagine the shutters came down in your mind quite early on, but it hasn't been all doom and gloom, has it? I've seen some very positive comment from Lizzie posted on LinkedIn on a regular basis. So there's obviously been some significant wins for you.
That's it. Yeah. So, I mean, like everyone in the start of the first lockdown, we really had to have a look at our business to see how it was going to cope. A lot of our clients as well, we're obviously on site in other people's offices, other people's buildings. So that initial lockdown where everyone did sort of freeze and get everyone working from home and out of the office, we removed a lot of our staff off of sites, and we had to look at our plan moving forward for it. But I'd say from August onwards, really, as soon as people started thinking that this is going to be a long-term thing, we do need a strategy to, you know, help staff work and be productive, but also long-term, how is that transition back into the office going to be? And we very early on started looking at modifications. So how can we make the office a COVID-safe environment, but also looking longer term of what is the workplace going to look like post-COVID? And yeah, we've been flat out since Christmas because, you know, people are making those changes, and yeah, I think it's going to be a busy year for us.
I think a lot of people seem to, in the conversations that I've had, people seem to think, oh, we can save a lot of space in terms of the office square footage, but I think a lot are realising we actually need the same amount of space because the function of the office is going to change from more sort of rows of desks to more open plan, collaborative spaces. Are you seeing that coming through?
Yeah, absolutely. We're working on a lot of schemes at the moment where people are potentially looking at, work from home has worked for a lot of people in certain departments. And so rather than having an office space which is full to 100% capacity at all times, being a bit more agile, being a bit more flexible about having hot desks or agile desks where people can come and set up in the office certain number of days a week and have that touchdown point and still be operational as they need to. But then what do you do with that additional space, and how is that utilised for the changing way that we're working now as well, with a lot more, video calls and virtual meetings taking place. So a lot of people are looking at their strategy of, do we need a full office with everyone with a fixed desk? And if that's a no, how can we make the office a nice space and encourage people back into it? Because I think we've all realised that working from home is great initially, but we're all missing that social interaction. And I know from my side, definitely I've got that longing to get back in and start seeing people in the office again. So that's the shift. I think, the workplace environment in terms of design and fit out was certainly going in more of an agile direction anyway. But there's some statistic that was probably seeing 6 years worth of development in 10 months just because of the pandemic. It's driven people to be a lot more flexible. So it's an exciting time. There's certainly a lot changing and going on. But yeah, I seriously think there's going to be a lot of rethinking and looking at commercial structure in terms of the workplace moving forward for a lot of businesses.
In terms of where you're based in Cambridge, what are the real strengths of the area that you feel will help it sort of propel forward in the recovery phase and beyond?
Cambridge is always a little bubble. So especially when, things of crisis hit. So, recessions and stuff like that, it's a very strange place that it does almost feel slightly protected, which we're extremely lucky to have that. It's certainly a hub that draws in some great minds in science and technology that have, they've had that foresight to adapt. They've been able to continue their business, and a lot of them have excelled, which again is in these times is a pretty phenomenal thing. So there's some businesses, like we say, that have really flourished from work from home, and there's people that we've spoken to that their business plan moving forward will be to have a lot of staff working from home. But on the flip side of that, we also work with, bioscience companies, pharmaceutical companies that they need to have that on-site presence in terms of equipment and the work that they're doing. It's not functional. You can't do that from home. And we're surrounded by those businesses in Cambridge. So we've been very lucky with that in terms of the people that it attracts and the businesses that it attracts, that it has maintained buoyant throughout this.
Fantastic. And then for COEL, an exciting future. You've had a recent significant change in the actual structure, management structure. So you're looking to recruit by the sounds of things.
So we had a MBO restructure a couple of weeks ago now. So Dan Brown, who I know you've met on a few occasions, he's sort of stepped away to work on some personal projects for the next couple of years. So we're all going to miss Dan. He was a big personality in COEL. So he's been there for about 27 years, I think. So he's certainly seen the company grow and built it up. So he's going to be one that we'll miss having around, but I'm sure we'll be back for some beers as soon as we can. But in terms of constantly growing, we're always looking to develop the different departments that we've got. And again, we've been reactive to the different ways that people are working now. So we've invested more on our design side. We've also got a property facilities maintenance team as well, which we're developing a lot more. So it's not just the fit out and then we leave projects or clients. We do look to maintain that and make sure that their facilities are operational and working well once they're into their places as well.
So if anybody's got some office space in there, a little bit of flummoxed as to how to reshape it and adapt it to the new world of working. What's the best thing with you then, Ollie?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's definitely a good time to be doing it. And I think if people are looking to return to the office now, give us a call. We've got a lot of experience of helping people adapt and change the space that they've got. And I think, over the next, 2 to 3 months, as people do to return to the office, is how do you make it a nice environment to encourage them away from their warm, cosy homes to back to the office space.
So quick plug on the email.
My contact details are ollie.lewis@coel.uk.com, or you can get hold of me on my mobile, which is 07704 217 903.
Excellent. And that's OLLIE. Brilliant. Ollie. Well, great to catch up with you. Delighted to hear that things are going from strength to strength at COEL, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, have to pop by soon, Richard. We'll catch up.